Let me unmute you. There we go. Hi.
I was just texting you, so thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was getting the puppy set up in his crate with a Kong, so he doesn't
Right?
disturb.
Yep, we're gonna hope that my son doesn't choose to scream his head off during this one, but that's the COVID world we live in today.
Yeah, right.
How's
It's
everything
tough,
going on your
tough
end?
with the rain too. With the puppy, I'm like making sure he tries to go. He doesn't. He fights me on going outside, so I'm like, come on, let's go on the leash. I'm dragging your butt out there.
And thank you so much for allowing us to push this one back. My gosh, were the past 48 hours. I don't know if I slept a whole lot in the past
I
48
was just
hours,
gonna
but it
ask if
looked
you're
like it.
awake.
Yeah. It was funny. I was on a meeting at 6 o'clock this morning, and one of my coworkers, she's from South Africa, but she's currently in Europe because of COVID. She's been unable to get home, and
Oh,
she's working just about as crazy as a lot of us are. And she just goes, "Sleep is a luxury."
God. And she's not even home. Oh,
Yeah, we have one of my coworkers who's from Shanghai is stuck in Sydney, Australia, which, if you're going to be stuck somewhere, that's not such a bad spot. But the situation was that she had left China to do a shoot with a company in Australia, and then China wouldn't let her back in. And now China would let her back in, but Australia won't let her leave.
oh my
So she's
God.
like caught in this international law limbo. And then
Wow.
with my South African colleague, she is in Stockholm. Same deal. She went to the headquarters for meetings and was going to head back, but could no longer go back because South Africa has shut down for certain reasons. So it's, hey, when you work at that international level as a consultant, wacky stuff like this happens. And so the company is just paying to have these people exist in these different markets.
That is wild, though. Wow.
Right?
So count your blessings, right? People that are in more fortunate situations can at least look to people like they're not even home. They may have kids and family that they want to see, and they can't. So
Yeah.
a unique situation right now. I'm sure that's tough, though.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful because with my little guy being 2.5 months, I'm just getting what I feel is like an extended paternity leave. And I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch him experience life. So.
That's great. My best friend is in the same boat. She had her daughter the end of December.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to see who's waiting here. See waiting room. Oh, okay. She had her first the end of December, so she and her husband was able to. He's a teacher, and so typically he could take some time, but he had racked up some 60 sick days or something like that, and they actually let him take that as basically like a paternity, but it was sick time, and they knew he wasn't really sick.
Sure.
So he was fortunate enough to take that. I think he went back for 2 or 3 weeks, and now he's home again. So he's in the same boat where really it's like this extended paternity leave for him, and his wife's not alone with a newborn, kind of figuring this all out. He gets to be home with her.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you got to find the silver lining. So yeah, it sounds like a very similar case with you, where it's awesome that he doesn't really have to miss these days with his firstborn, 3-month-old. So it's that way.
Yeah, I can relate. That's really cool.
So how old's your son? 2.5 months, you said?
Yeah, just 2.5 months. So yeah,
Nice.
he'll be 3 months on May 5th. So the fact that it's already been 3 months is nuts. Do you have any kids? Do you have any kids?
I do not. No, just the puppy right now. Step at a time.
Well, if you ever do, just know the first month is pure hell. Like there's really I know I'm being recorded, but like there's no other way to say it. Like, it is pure hell because you're living your life in like hour-and-a-half increments, and it is so painful because you have to either choose, like, do I eat? Do I brush my teeth? Do I change my clothes? Do I shower? And then as soon as you like make that decision, the kid starts crying and the whole thing starts all over again. It is so disorienting in the first
You're
month.
just in this other world. I mean, that's what I've been hearing my friends. I have an older brother and sister that each have two. So luckily I've been prepped from a lot of angles.
Sure.
To kind of, I mean, you never really know until you're in it, living it. There's no way. But they're like, you're truly just you're on your own like continent. Like
Yes.
Nothing else is going on. Nothing else matters.
Yep. Yeah, it's similar to yourself. I was probably one of the last of my friends set to have a kid, and so I've been an uncle. I've been you know, I've had that kind of exposure, but my gosh, when it's your kid and
Right.
you're the one who's up every hour and a half to 2 hours, it's a whole nother level. Yeah.
And then they kind of turn that corner, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, did I just get 3 hours of straight sleep?
Yeah. My little guy turned the corner maybe about 2.5 weeks ago, and
Oh, that's nice.
he's now sleeping maybe 4 to 5 hours. Of course, comically, like now my workload has just picked up. So it wasn't the baby, it was the job. But we're getting some sleep.
Yeah, even when you get those stretches, like that's what everyone says. Like if you can hit like 3, 4, 5 hours, you almost feel normal again at
Oh
that.
yeah.
That
Totally. That's
is
totally
normal.
true. Yeah. And then what's happening now, so because I've really been putting in between like 12 to 16 hours a day every day. And so Universum gave me off today, and then I'll have off every Friday for the rest of May, which will be great. But in the
Oh, that's
meantime,
great.
yeah, in the meantime, I'm working European hours and American hours kind of combined, which is why it's these ridiculous like 12 to 16-hour days.
Well, it's
But
nice that they recognize that.
yeah, and just hey, grateful that I'm in a position where I have a job because I've got plenty of friends that
Yes.
are. So I see that we're recording now. So when this, I guess you're going to post this somewhere. I guess they lob all this portion off so that people don't hear us
Yep.
talking for them. Yeah.
I can cut it down. And yesterday I made the mistake of stopping the recording. I just figured they don't need to hear, I don't need to be recording our small talk and taking up room on the cloud. And so I stopped it and didn't start again until after the intro.
Yeah.
Luckily, it didn't cut off any of the presentation. It comes in right as Jim is introducing himself, but it cuts off my intro of him. But it could have been worse. So I learned from that I'm just going to let it keep rolling and then snip it down at the end.
Sure. Sure.
Oh, this is who I was waiting for. Amy. She likes to pop in and just say hi and thank you. So I'll let her in.
No, absolutely. And did we wind up losing headcount by moving it from Wednesday to
Funny
Friday?
thing, it went up by 3 or 4.
No kidding. Okay. Hi, Amy.
Oh, let me
I think you might be on mute.
There you go.
How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for allowing us to move this to Friday because Wednesday and Thursday just turned out to be crazy.
Yeah, no, and in a good way. It's something you can share with students in the sense of saying like how great it is that there's still amazing business going on and that, better that you were busy and had to be on a call. So that's good news.
Yeah, that's what Pam and I were just talking about. And when I spoke with Shannon Conklin as a result of some conversations that I had with Pam last week, and she was saying the same thing. So it was just great to have that reaffirmed by a TCNJ resource as well. But again, I'm so grateful because as I was telling Pam, I've been rocking like 14, 16-hour days. I actually have off today, so the company was nice to allow me to take off every Friday from now through the rest of May, which will be great. But then, the flip side of that is it's going to be crazy hours Monday through Thursday.
Well, make sure around this that you take time for yourself and do something fun today.
I was going to say thank you for still doing this for us despite all of your crazy. I mean, this is just truly volunteer, so thank you.
I think, I'm not sure, Amy, did you see the presentation I did with School of Business?
I did not. I'm sorry. I did not get to see that.
It's probably all for the better. But I'm just referencing it because it's personal to me. And that's part of the reason why I love teaching. And I think I hope that comes across in today's presentation. So the one with School of Business was more about presentation skills, which dovetails very directly with what I do at Interactive Multimedia School of Communications. Today is an extension of that. So this is more a bit in the professional space, but it also, I mean, it ties in very strongly to my own background. And so I'm just happy to have the opportunity to communicate with the students and glad that we didn't lose headcount. It sounds like we gained headcount.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, we found with the one we did yesterday, not everybody comes on the call that signed up for it. So we're hoping that today everybody has it on top of mind and comes and joins us.
It's just like a live event. Amy and I were saying there's always a bit of melt off, and we're finding that's no different virtually either.
Yeah, that makes sense. And is this Lisa joining us?
Yeah, I guess she, there she is. Yeah.
Hey, Lisa.
Let me unmute you, Lisa. I said I'm letting the VIPs get in early.
How's the baby, Sean?
He's doing really well.
Good.
I was just trying to see. I'm like looking through my door. I know you can't. So I'm just looking down the screen here to see if my wife was going to walk by with him. I would have grabbed him for you.
Oh,
Aw.
yeah.
Oops. Yeah, that would have been
How old
great.
is he, Sean?
2.5 months.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
his
my
name is
God.
his name is Gabriel, and he's just a cute little dude. Let me see if I can.
So
Oh.
even more so, thank you for doing this when I'm
I
sure
know.
you have no sleep and
Yeah, that's the other reality that I'm in. Is just figuring out life as a new parent. Hold
Yep.
on. Let me see if I can find. There we go. Let me do this. I can share the screen real quick because I think we got like
Oh, good.
a second here. So here he is on his 2-month birthday.
Oh my God.
That's a great
So,
picture.
yeah,
What a
so he
smile.
loves his little lion. He loves his lion. So he had his little lion shirt on and his little lion doll. And it was so funny. We just gave him the lion and he just started beaming, and talk about like perfect photographic device. So that was earlier this month, and we'll see. I'm sure this month he'll probably look like he's eating lemons, but he was really cute.
Do are you able to are you working from home right now?
Yeah, I've been working from home, my gosh, since about the middle of February, because
Okay.
he was born February 5th. I went back to the New York office for one day after I had a 10-day paternity leave, went back for one meeting in New York. And then right after that, we got the word that some of our Chinese colleagues were getting sick in Shanghai and in the eastern parts of China. And so Universum just shut the whole company down. So not physically down. So none of our consultants have been flying. None of our productions have been happening. Everybody's been working from home, including myself.
Great. So you get to spend extra time with him too. This is a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife is very happy about that. So, there's a lot of, but my wife is a champ. She does, she really does 85% of the work. I do about 15. Because as I was telling Pam, I'm still working like wicked crazy hours.
I would
Something
imagine.
close to, yeah. And that was why we had to move this. And thank you to the team for letting us move this, because we had a crisis with a Canadian client. And so now not only was it on the Americas, but it's on the West Coast. And so I was up, my gosh, till like midnight Wednesday trying to fix something all day
Wow.
Thursday. So just super grateful.
Right.
Hey, Sean, send us that picture of Gabriel, because that would be something fun with him all in his lion gear. Maybe we could find a way to get that into TCNJ on
Yeah.
Facebook or
I didn't
social
even,
media.
the branding guy somehow didn't even make that connection. Yeah, let me just make a little note to myself. I'll just email it over to you.
All right.
I'm going to admit the people in the waiting room so they'll be able to hear us.
Mute
wait,
me. I'm going to go back.
So
Okay.
Sean, just so you know, we may take our cameras off, but we're listening to you. Just so that you know we're not, if our faces go.
Sean, I'm trying to unmute you. I'm not sure if I did that or you did that.
I did it just as we're,
Okay.
but I'll hop myself right back on.
Nope, no problem.
Just let me know when you want me to hop on.
For those of you still joining, I'm just going to give it another couple of minutes here and see if we have some folks still filing in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't want to wait too much past 1 o'clock to kick things off, so I'll just keep an eye on anyone that may be joining as we move forward. First of all, thanks everyone for joining our Industry Insider webinar series. This is our 3rd webinar, so thank you all for being a part of it and joining us today. Just getting some messages here. All right. So I want to begin by just a few reminders. It looks like everybody is muted and everyone, for the most part, has their camera off. So thank you for that. We do ask that you stay muted throughout the presentation, just as not to take away with any background noise or microphone feedback. So if you could stay muted, that would be great. And we are conducting this in a meeting format. So if you choose to put your cameras on, you certainly can do so, gain a little visual interaction. You'll be able to see the others that are on the call. If you want to remain, keep your camera disabled, that's certainly fine. At the end, we are going to have a question and answer segment. And if you would like to turn your cameras on then, that would be encouraged. We can see one another. Our speaker can then see those of you who are posing the questions. And again, just gain a little interaction and visual engagement. So if you would like to turn your cameras on at the end, we do encourage that. On that note, we will have the question and answer segment conducted through the chat feature. So at any point, if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to send it over to me via chat. You do not have to wait until the end, so you don't have to worry about forgetting your questions. And with that, I will go ahead and introduce our speaker. We have Sean O'Grady. Some of you may know him as Professor O'Grady. He is class of 2004 from TCNJ. He is a dual major in both communication studies as well as business. Sean started his career out in national TV hosting. He also was the executive producer of the 2012 Paralympic Games in London. And since then, Sean has transitioned into advertising and branding. And he is now the consulting and creative director at Universum, where he creates marketing campaigns for globally recognized companies. On top of that, Sean is also an adjunct professor of public speaking and professional leadership development at TCNJ. So many of you may recognize him or the name as a professor at TCNJ. And if that's not enough on his plate, he is also a new dad, and he and his wife and son reside in Bucks County. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Sean to get started with his presentation. And thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for taking the time, Sean, and take it away.
Well, thank you so much for that, Pam, and hello to everybody. I see some friends on the call, so I just have to give a shout out to Miles. Miles, welcome back. I'm not sure if you're joining from Oxford or if you've made it back here to the States, but it's good to see you. Amanda, good to see you as well. So I can tell I've got a couple of students here on the call, and it's nice to have you. And it's nice to have all of you here. I'm going to take a little moment just to share my screen, so you're going to see a PowerPoint, and then we'll officially kick off. And here we go. Share that. Excellent. I want to minimize this. Again, thank you very much for that introduction. Just very grateful for the opportunity to be here with all of you this afternoon, and I hope that we have a lot of fun here together. So looking forward to an interactive question and answer session. And let me just make sure I've got my remote going. So here we go. I wanted to start with this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt because it applies to branding and applies to a number of the things that we're going to be speaking about today. And that is that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And that a lot of personal branding is an inside job. How you're going to position yourself and how you're going to position yourself into the minds of those individuals that you're trying to connect with. What we're going to do here is have a little bit of an introduction, take a look at the virtual hiring landscape from a quantitative and qualitative perspective. And I'll explain more about that. It's connected to what I do full-time when I'm not at TCNJ with the company I work for, Universum. And then we're going to talk through some evidence-based best practices for personal branding during COVID-19. So ways to get you noticed by individuals that you'd like to connect with. And then, as I was saying, a Q&A session where we can make this fun and interactive for everyone. So who the heck am I and why am I speaking to you today? Well, for those of you that I don't know on the call, again, my name is Sean. I'm an adjunct at the College of New Jersey. And as Pam said, when I'm not at TCNJ, I work for a company called Universum. Universum is the global leader in employer branding. And employer branding is linked to consumer branding, but it's a little different. Consumer branding, when you watch TV, you see commercials. When you go on Facebook or any social media site and you scroll through, you see ads. That's a consumer brand. An employer brand is why people would go to work for one of these organizations. And these logos you see here, these are just some of the companies that I work with, which is part of the reason why you might be seeing bags under my eyes. I came out of TCNJ back in 2004, went right into a career in journalism, had a lot of fun with that, migrated over to consulting, and now I'm involved in advertising and coaching. And it's my passion. It's what I love to do. But before all of this, and I shared this with the School of Business about a week ago, in 2004, I was sitting at Lions Stadium and I was on the field. It was graduation time. Dr. Cornell West from Princeton University was the keynote speaker that year. He received an honorary degree. And I was sitting down there with the communications majors, looking up at Dr. West. He was in the Matrix movies at that time and wrote this seminal book called Race Matters. He was a big deal and still is. And I'm listening to this fantastically successful person speak. I'm looking at all these people around me and I'm thinking, oh fudge, like Ralphie from A Christmas Story. And the reality was I didn't have a job. I just spent 4 years going to school pretty much round the clock because I was a double major. And what I did that night, and why there's a picture of Brad Pitt on the screen right now looking all jacked, is because I left TCNJ after graduation, went home to my parents' house in Toms River, moved back into the bedroom that I grew up in. So I was in my old bed, old paint, old everything. And I went to go see the movie Troy with my best friend, Nick. That was how my graduation experience felt. And so for anybody who might be graduating right now, who's on this webinar, who has this feeling inside like, oh my gosh, what is going on? What's the world throwing at me? It's not where you start, it's where you finish. And as you can see from here, I'm not sitting in the movie theater watching Brad Pitt anymore, but it was kind of an okay flick, but I remember that feeling quite well. So let's talk a little bit about these stats. I work for a company called Universum, as I said, and my clients are chief marketing officers and what are called CHROs, chief human resource officers, marketing directors, and people who work in talent acquisition. So every single day, whether I'm talking with General Electric, Deloitte, Vale, companies across the globe, it's all about who they're hiring, and how they can hire better. So this is an area where I do have some expertise. And what we recently did, we did this survey. We asked people, like I just described, the hiring managers, are they hiring, yes or no, and what's going on? Not going to share any specifics, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a contextual landscape to showcase or to kind of move into our talk about personal branding. So we looked at a survey response of 120 employer branding leads and talent acquisition directors across all different industries. And the survey took place between March 25th and April 8th. So this is super recent data. And for you folks who, again, who may be graduating now or graduating soon, we straight up asked them, what's going on with your hiring budget? And you'll see 2% increased, 58% remained the same, 17% on hold, 9% were shift or allocated, and that 15% reduced or eliminated. So that means 85% of major companies that we've been speaking with are either remaining the same, increasing, on hold, or allocated. That's fantastic news for people who are coming out of college. And when it comes to internships, so for those of you who aren't graduating this year but are on the call, many of the companies that we spoke with, so those over 120 that we spoke to, they're just deferring start dates into the summer, about a 50-50 split on conducting virtual internships, and only 18% of those 120 employers said that they were rescinding offers. So 82% of chief human resource officers, talent acquisition directors say they're going forward with internships. That's good, good news. I broke it up for you just by industry in case you're interested, and if you're hearing some screams in the background, that is my 2.5-month-old son, and I promise we are good parents. He's just in that state of life. But I just wanted to put this out here so that you could see kind of a breakup depending upon what industry you might be interested in, since I know we have a multidisciplinary audience on the webinar today. This is of interest as well, and it comes right back to what we're going to be talking about in personal branding, is we were asking companies, well, how are you communicating with your employees now that we're in this work from home COVID-19 environment? Traditional email was at the very top, but then you've got Microsoft Teams and Zoom, the platform we're on right now, at 55% above phone, which means more people are going to a format like this than they are picking up their cell phone. And right beneath that, at 47%, you've got Skype, and then WhatsApp, which is very big in Latin America for communication, and then WebEx, BlueJeans, Workplace. These are different video formats. But what you're seeing there is this advance in Teams and Zoom, which plays right in to personal branding. Last thing I wanted to talk about was just some qualitative feedback. So that was the quantitative feedback. And I shared this with the School of Business last week as well. And that is, I had the opportunity to speak with the global head of recruiting for Ernst & Young, as well as the global head of early career development at General Electric. And what Julie at General Electric wanted to convey to the students on this call and the alumni on this call was that right now with COVID-19, pounding on the door doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to shake out new opportunities. So if you're badgering recruiters or constantly sending in emails, it may simply be that they're trying to figure out what's going on right now. They were saying the better thing to do is to engage with companies on LinkedIn and follow on social channels, which ties directly to personal branding, and we're going to talk more about that. Julie at GE also said joinhandshake.com. This is something that I spoke about with the TCNJ Career Center as well. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. And this idea of taking a long-term relationship building perspective with employers and recruiting managers, which is all about personal branding. On the EY side, I spoke with Dan Black, again, the global head of recruiting for the company. And I love this point. He said, volunteering now will look very impressive in 3 to 6 months. Cool, because that could tie into your personal brand. Focus on developing transferable skills, update your digital profile and your digital shadow, which we'll talk a little bit more, and thinking about a latticed and creative approach to your short-term career. And ultimately, Dan was saying, to everyone, regardless of age range, regardless of where you are in the hiring process, cut yourself a break. I can attest again from talking with different hiring managers at major companies that they are all trying to figure out how they're going to be connecting with folks during COVID-19. They are iterating, they're trying things, and they're looking for college students and alumni like you to interact with them, which means you're in a fantastic spot. One other thing I wanted to point out, and this is a conversation that I've been having with students as well as been having with employers, is that if you're a person who's looking for an opportunity right now or is trying to brand themselves and is probing around on social media, there are companies that are obviously hiring. And these are the organizations that you're seeing on the evening news or in your news feed. And that's Amazon, CVS, Dollar Tree, Walmart. You've probably heard stories about them hiring hundreds of thousands of people. On the downside here, in that red area, there are certainly some industries that are feeling this more than others. The hospitality industry, airlines, restaurants, the oil industry. If you had an aspiration to work there, you may have a longer tail or a longer runway to get to that spot. But there's the bulk of the employers that we speak with in that top Fortune 5 are kind of in this holding pattern right now, as we saw evidenced by the data earlier. What you're seeing on social media, if you check them out on LinkedIn, if you go to their Facebook page, their Instagram account, how the company is supporting its employees, how employees are supporting customers, how employees are staying connected during COVID-19, and then these like silly and fun photos of people working in their home office like myself here with their child or with their dog. If you're seeing companies put things like that, or other employers, whether it's a company, a nonprofit, a government organization, if they're putting out content like that on their social channels, it's a real good chance that they're still hiring. They're just not being overt about it. And the last thing I wanted to talk about in this data set is one of the things I love about my job right now is that we have offices all across the globe. So I have the opportunity to regularly speak with colleagues in Asia. And for me, that's a little bit like looking into the future, because in China specifically, they were feeling COVID-19 in January. And we've just been 5 to 6 weeks behind them as it's been migrating westward across the globe. And what you're seeing here, I don't expect that anyone's going to be able to read the Chinese writing that we have on screen. But what I wanted to point out is that our Chinese colleagues at Universum were saying about 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago, when the outbreak began, content from companies was focused on corporate messaging, donations, government and society, and then like frontline employees. And at the peak of COVID, about a month and a half ago in China specifically, companies were showcasing how they support their employees, customers, and communities while working from home. Sounds familiar. That's where we're at right now in the United States. And the aftermath in China, which is beginning right now, so this is current, their content is now focused on coworkers going back or employees going back into the office and how organizations are providing a safe environment. I can say that my Chinese colleagues had face-to-face meetings for the first time this week. They were distant, they were across the room from each other, but they were physically in person in the same building. And that gives us an awful lot of hope as we go forward in the personal branding space. So personal branding, for those who may not be entirely familiar, you've probably heard me say the word at least 10 times at this point. It is what you project. It is your image. And I've had the good privilege of conducting these kinds of activations, and that's a consulting term that means experiences or projects with people that you might recognize from TV, from politics, and from major business. And let me just explain this diagram in front of you. So one of the exercises that I wanted to leave you with is how you can discover your innate personal brand, innate meaning genuine and authentic to you. So the first question is, what do you radiate? If you were to find a friend online, because we're in this social distancing world, and just straight up ask them, hey, what are the first 3 things that you think of when you experience me? The first 3 adjectives that pop out of them: outgoing, pleasant, bubbly, whatever it might be. That's valuable feedback. How do you resonate? So the first question is to strangers. The second question is for people that you've known for some time. These are your friends and your family members who are going to give it to you straight. So they're not meeting you for the first time. They've known you for some time. What are the first 3 adjectives that friends or family associate with you? You might get something different from what you get from a stranger. And then what's your reality? Because in personal branding, perception is reality. It's how you feel about yourself. What are the 3 adjectives that you associate with yourself? And perhaps 1 or 2 of them could be aspirational. This is the idea of what you would like to be projecting versus what these 2 sources are telling you they project on the first impression and people who have known you for a while. So my first take-home exercise, something that you can do very easily during COVID-19, is to discover what your innate personal brand might be, because it's the foundation for where we go. And where we go is this Venn analysis. And stick with me here. So as we said, we've got what do you radiate? So the green circle is what strangers feel about you in that first impression. The blue circle is how you resonate. That's that long term. And then up top, it's how you feel about yourself, that self-direction and aspirational. We do this exercise with celebrities. We do this exercise with business professionals who are going on CNBC or Fox Business. And we do this exercise with people who are running for public office. It's just part of the job. And very frankly, they pay an awful lot of money for this kind of stuff. And what you're seeing in the Venn, for those who might not be familiar with a Venn analysis, is so the word nice is right in the center where everything overlaps. That's because if you're self-directed, you want to be seen as nice. When people meet you for the first time, they think you're nice, and your friends and family who've known you for a while, they believe you're nice. So that's why it's in that intersection of all 3 points. As you're probably starting to pick up, you want to be seen as a leader. People who know you for a long time see you as a leader, which is why it's in that overlap area between the red and the blue. But people aren't getting that on the first impression. But what they are getting is that your friends and people who are meeting you for the first time say you're into yourself or you're overconfident. That is a gap area because it's not in the part where you want to be seen. So if I were to do this with someone who is trying to project themselves and develop a personal brand, we would highlight that in red and say, if that person started creating content right now, they're probably going to come off as a braggadocious person who's totally into themselves. That would be an area that we have to pay attention to. But the fact that nice is in the center of the bullseye and there's evidence that proves that there's some leadership there, that's a really good thing. Now, allow me to tell a selfie. As Pam said in the introduction, one of the perhaps most known jobs I ever had was being the executive producer of the 2012 Paralympic Games in London. That's me right there holding the camera. That is a professional athlete known as Oscar Pistorius, who was a pretty big deal back in 2012. And that's my friend Megan with her back to us, and who's got the 2012 on the back of her hat. I came out into the field because Megan really wanted to meet Oscar Pistorius, and so I volunteered to hold the camera for her so that she could talk to him. He's since become infamous for reasons we won't get into here, but he was certainly what he was. He was a handsome guy, and he was the star of those Paralympic Games. In the intro, we mentioned that I migrated from broadcasting into advertising, and that's a very polite way of saying I got myself fired. And that's why this presentation is very personal to me. And whenever I have the opportunity to speak about personal branding, it resonates with me because I know exactly what it feels like to have to retool myself and figure out where I'm going with my career. What I wanted to show you was what my Venn was looking like at that time. And what you see there and what you radiate, this is me in 2012. And when I was introduced to these concepts, so at that time, my gosh, I was 29 years old. I had this huge job as executive producer. I was hired above people who were much older than me. And all I kept thinking was, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I put all this wacky pressure on myself. And what was radiating, so when strangers were meeting me, they thought, wow, this individual has leadership, he has confidence, and he has talent. And then what I was resonating, people had known me for a while were saying, yeah, you've got leadership, you've got confidence, and you've got talent. On the table stakes, I knew that I had leadership because I was thrust into these positions and I had some success. But on the inside, I did not feel confident. I felt afraid. And I did not feel very good about what I was doing. I felt like I had nothing to offer. I felt like a fraud. And so as a result of that, when I got this job, even though I had all this evidence that said, I've got something to offer, I felt like that 22-year-old version of myself that went to go see Troy the day I graduated because I had no idea where I was going with my life. It had been, at that point, 8 years since I had graduated TCNJ, and I just felt off. And so if there are any of you here, whether you're an alumni or you're a current student, and right now this situation has you rattled and you feel off, it's icky, it's awful, and there's a way forward, and it has a lot to do with personal branding. I mentioned I got myself fired. I got myself fired because I lied. 29 years old, and I lied about something that I didn't need to lie about, but I lied about it because I was afraid. And there were a lot of people who didn't want to fire me, but they knew it was the right thing to do, and it was the right thing to do. So I had to rebuild. And part of rebuilding is personal branding. And what we're going to talk about for the next 5-6 minutes was staying in the facts. And those of you who have taken my class or seen some of my presentations, whether it's about public speaking, whether it's about branding, whether it's about different areas that they're related to business, it's getting out of making decisions based in fear, that fear of putting yourself out there as a brand, thinking that you have nothing to offer, and getting rid of all of that gunk that's in your head and coming back to the evidence in that Venn analysis. Getting that fear to be concentrated and come out of you in a way that is beautiful, conducive, and authentic to who you are. And I don't mean to sound very utopist. There's legit business underpinnings to this. And I can promise that not only have I done this with myself, but I do this with others professionally. And so, as I said earlier, perception is reality when it comes to branding, when it comes to positioning yourself in the minds of individuals who might hire you, whether you think you can or think you can't. You're right. Henry Ford said that, and it continues to be true with folks that I work with, whether they're a 65-year-old CEO who's about to go on CNBC or a 22-year-old college student at the College of New Jersey. That fear is human and it is pervasive. It has struck me, and I find that people can relate to it. And as I told the School of Business last week, adversity truly introduces us to ourselves. So I'll take one last second to talk about me, and then we'll hop into the evidence behind it. So my path forward, the way that we develop a personal brand, is to focus on the fundamentals that make you feel good about yourself, that you are passionate about, and that you can put out into the world that feel authentic. And for me, that was volunteering, communication, and video production. I went back to my roots of being a storyteller. I never show this to anybody, but I did this just for this presentation. That's a screen grab of my website, SeanTO'Grady.com, which is part of personal branding. Somehow people find this. I get booked for paid speaking engagements as a result of this. I hate looking at myself. I hate this, but it works. It's part of the process. So in 2012, when I got myself fired, I had to figure out where I was going to go. And it was a clumsy process. But I started volunteering with Habitat for Humanity because I just wanted to get out of the house and I wanted to physically do stuff. And I started not only hitting nails in with hammers, but Habitat in Ocean County, Northern Ocean Habitat for Humanity, found out my background and they said, you could really help us with video. So I started shooting videos for Habitat. I joined Toastmasters International in Lakewood, which is near Toms River, and I started lecturing and volunteering with my local church. At that time, it was St. Joseph's in Toms River. And what I was doing was I created this portfolio site, kind of like a blog, that showcased what I was doing with Habitat. Not in any kind of bragging way, but I just wanted to have a record of it because it was fun. I was putting up LinkedIn posts about what was going on with Toastmasters. And really my experience at St. Joseph's with their Cygnus religious group was more about just getting involved with young people and helping them to find where they wanted to go with their lives. So that was 2012. Now it's 2020. I'm a professor, or what is my title? Assistant adjunct professor at the College of New Jersey because of what happened in 2012. Because of going to Toastmasters and getting involved in that organization, I had a conversation with John Kipoff, who was at that time the chairperson of IMM. Dr. Lawton had heard about this conversation, and next thing you know, I got a teaching opportunity at TCNJ because of some branding points that I put out years earlier. Advertising and consulting and coaching, that work that I did with Habitat for Humanity when I wasn't looking for a job, wound up winning a couple of awards, wound up helping Habitat raise a bunch of money, and ultimately got me a job in advertising. And along the way, I've had the great privilege of helping a couple people, some of them who are on this call, I think, I hope, with at least Amanda and Miles. And where does this come to? And how do we go about branding ourselves? If you are a college student or a recent alumni, the single best place that you can brand yourself to advance your career is LinkedIn. Now, the do's and the don'ts. The do's: digital profile and shadow research. This is what Dan Black was talking about at Ernst & Young. The first thing we want to do is Google your name. Google your name, and if you have a common name, Google your name and TCNJ, or Google your name and where you grew up. So for me, it would be Sean O'Grady, Toms River. When I Google Sean O'Grady, there's a famous boxer from the 1970s. He owns SeanO'Grady.com, which is why I own SeanTO'Grady.com. I found out early that I had to differentiate myself from this guy, because if anybody Googles me, I look like a boxer from the 70s. Thankfully, we look nothing alike, but that's part of the digital profile. And the digital shadow, which Dan was talking about, is your social media profiles. Most individuals won't cop to this, but when you go to start applying for jobs, one of the first things recruiters will do is check out your social channels. Technically, they can't say that, but it happens. And so it's incredibly important that if you have some photos of things that you did while you were in college, you can supplant that by putting out some content that shows your bliss and that passion we were talking about earlier. Do that simple Venn analysis. So that was that activity I showed you earlier. Just doing this and asking these questions to people that you know and people that you don't know in the stranger exercise, or kind of like a near relation, that's going to help you to kind of understand where you're leaning. Establish your North Star. Again, for me, it was, hey, what are the things that just make me happy? Volunteering, communicating and helping others to communicate, and just getting involved in video. Those are things that I would do whether you paid me or not. That's a really good idea to focus on that as your North Star, your guiding light for what kind of content you can create and what your brand is all about. And then establish your audience. I presume for this presentation that it would be recruiters, people who could potentially hire you. but think about who your audience is and what kind of value they would get out of any information that you would put out on LinkedIn. Secure your platforms. So just like how I bought SeanTOGrady.com through 1&1, which is just like GoDaddy or any place where you can buy URLs. Is it a portfolio? Is it a website? Is it a blog? Is it securing social media channels or creating a separate Instagram account specific to something that you do? It's just something to think about so that you secure those and you own those and you populate and develop your audiences there. And ultimately creating photos, copy, and videos, and keeping it fun and simple. Anyone who's ever tried to do something like this will tell you, whether you're a blogger or even if you're just an Instagram person, if it starts to feel like a job and it starts to feel painful, that's going to communicate through with what you do. If you keep it simple, if it's simply a post a week or a post every 2 weeks, you're still building up a library of information that backs who you are and associates you with the topic. You don't have to go gangbusters posting something every single day. In fact, that's probably a recipe for disaster. Be authentically you. I see this a lot with some of the younger folks that I work with. When I say younger folks, again, knowing that I have the opportunity to work with individuals who capture public attention, we'll say. And when they're stretching, when they're trying to be something that they just don't fit, people feel that. They feel that, and it feels just as interesting as if you're communicating in person. That inauthenticity comes through online. Measure and A/B test your material, if that's a term you're not familiar with. So let's say, for example, you want to brand yourself as someone who is great at video production. I think there might be somebody on the call who's interested in that. You can start putting up little videos on LinkedIn, but watch how your engagement stats are. So after about a week to 2 weeks, record the number of likes, record the number of shares, record the number of views in an Excel chart or a Google sheet, somewhere where you can keep track, and do that for each piece of content. Usually 1 week to 2 weeks is a good period of time because that gives you your full organic reach. And by A/B testing, that's option A and option B. So if you put out a piece of content that was a video the first week, and you put out a piece of content that was a photo the second week, and the photo got 5 times as many views as the video, that's an A/B test. That's telling you that option B, the photo, performed better. You may want to focus your content there for your audience because that's what's resonating. And always think long-term. That's what all the data has been saying right now. And my own experience is when I started putting material online, when I started branding myself, it took about 3 to 4 years before fruit started to bear from those activities. But as Dan Black said from Ernst & Young, he said, people who volunteer now during COVID are going to look very interesting and exciting 3 to 6 months from now, as opposed to people who just kind of hang out. And then cultivating mentors and relationships. This is connected to some of the resources that are available right here at TCNJ. And what we mean by that is finding people at companies and places that you want to work, direct messaging them, private messaging them, or just straight up commenting on something that they're putting on Instagram or something that they're putting on Twitter or LinkedIn and saying, you know, hey, my name is Sean. I'm a student at the College of New Jersey and I'm super interested in your organization. Could we do an informational interview? That's pretty slick. Because an informational interview is the worst thing that person could say is no. And 2, the best thing that could happen is you've just made a long-term foot in the door relationship with somebody who knows that you're interested in their company. And when I say don'ts, you'll see that I purposely blocked out this person. And this wasn't me picking somebody or harping on somebody. I simply went into my LinkedIn feed and found the first person that gave this example. This individual posts a photo or video of herself every single day on LinkedIn. And if you were to leave this presentation and Google personal branding do's and don'ts, so if you straight up did that, Googled personal branding do's and don'ts, everything that you're seeing here, albeit without these coverings, is what you're doing wrong. And even though this person is getting some good views, they're certainly better than 0. if we go back to that Venn, and what are people going to associate with this individual if all they see every single day in their LinkedIn feed is a picture of this person? I recognize that some people want to be movie stars. I recognize that some people want to be lead singers. And I recognize that some people want to be the next Tony Robbins or motivational speaker. I don't begrudge those individuals. But people that want to do something more in the line of accounting, or we'll just say any other job outside of trying to be the front person of a band, if all you're doing is posting yourself and pictures of yourself and videos of yourself, constantly talking about yourself, we're projecting ego and alienating value and connection. So again, for anyone who's thinking about getting involved in personal branding and putting content out there, think about your audience, think about your bliss. I'm not saying that you can't feature yourself, but you shouldn't be the star of your own show 24/7. It should be some kind of communicative relationship that presents topics and ideas about something that you want to be associated with to that audience. There's a line, and again, I'm not trying to pick on this particular person, and I went to great lengths to hide the identity. Just know that there is that line, and everybody has to learn that line for themselves. As we're coming towards the question and answer session, I know we kicked off a little late. What can we do right here at TCNJ that can help you? I spoke with Shannon Conklin. She is your Career Center Director. Excellent person. We had a great conversation. And there's a couple of resources that are available right now. This picture that you see here, this is right on the TCNJ site. So if you go to careers.tcnj.edu, you can follow this link as well. They have a COVID-19 career resources. I actually showed this to some major employers that I've been speaking with this week because I thought this was super slick. The TCNJ is just throwing up resources in an active blog or wiki format. And there's a link on there to 500 companies that are hiring right now in the greater New Jersey area. Super cool. One of the biggest things that TCNJ can also do for you is Handshake, which, interestingly enough, General Electric, the company that was the longest listed on the Dow Jones, it was recently knocked off, but we're talking about a 100-year-old company. We have the person who's in charge of early careers at GE, where thousands of people get their start, said join Handshake, and the TCNJ Career Center allows you to join Handshake. Handshake is a platform that allows you to brand yourself and to connect with potential employers and recruiters. You can also schedule, there's a thing called Big Interview, which is like a virtual interviewing opportunity. You can learn there. And then scheduling one-on-ones with your career center. This would be an opportunity for those of you who are trying to get jobs right now. You can kind of do these one-on-one mock sessions with people at Career Services. But the biggest thing, and what ties back to personal branding, those two last points, cultivating mentors through informational interviews. You can find recruiters and find organizations that you'd want to work with through Handshake via careers.tcnj.edu, and you can set up those informational interviews. And what better thing to do during those informational interviews but subtly drop that you're working on a portfolio, or say, here's my Facebook page, or as you can see on LinkedIn, I'm really passionate about this. I started a podcast that talks about how people can become better leaders. That stuff is going to make you stand out from others who are applying for that same job. One last thing that I'll say about Career Center, and Shannon and I had spoken about this, and it tied back to what Dan Black was saying at Ernst & Young, that recruiters and people who are involved in hiring are trying to figure out this new COVID world. They are iterating. They're trying virtual info sessions. They're trying virtual meetups. They're trying these panel discussions. And the key thing is they're trying. They want students and alumni to come to these because they're probably even going to have you take a survey. What better way to meet a recruiter, to get into the door at a company, than to attend an information session and provide them with feedback and begin a dialogue with the recruiter where you can say, oh, by the way, here's what I've been doing. I've been volunteering with my local church and helping to provide food to folks during COVID-19. You're going to look like a rock star. it's a great way to go forward. Now, I can't say enough about Handshake and the Career Center. If you get a chance, please get involved with the Career Center by following those links and signing up with Handshake, because it is going to help to differentiate you. Last thing, for additional resources, since we all have a little bit of time on our hands, and just to know that I practice what I preach, I bought this book in 2012, 2013 when I was going through my process. It's Reinventing You by Dorie Clark. Whether you need to be reinvented or you are inventing yourself and your brand for the first time as someone who may be coming right out of college, this is a fantastic text that walks you through step by step in detail many of the things that we covered here today. I'm also a big fan of an oldie but a goodie, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Mr. Carnegie's work is still very active today, and there's a number of different centers around the country that will offer his services. Toastmasters, of course, I'm a poster child for that organization. It is an international public speaking and leadership development organization. It's done well by me. I always feel like it could help anyone with their brand. Norman Vincent Peale's Power of Positive Thinking and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey, all good resources for people who are trying to figure out how they want to build their brand and their image going forward. So at this point, I know I talked a bit more than I had hoped, but I hope that you found it to be of value, and we can open it up for questions.
Sean, thank you so much. That was awesome. Thanks for all of that.
You're welcome.
I think there was a lot of value in that to be taken from that. So thank you. And we certainly have some questions. They've been rolling in here towards the end of your presentation. So I will mention before I take questions that Lynette Harris wrote in. She is a staff member at the Career Center at TCNJ, and she is on this call. So if there are any particular questions that you wanted to direct to the Career Center, Lynette is on this call as well. So I wanted to shout that out before we move forward. And I'll do our first question. I'll read aloud. I have an internship plan for this summer, but it might get moved to happening remotely. What are some things you suggest to do to make a good impression since I will not be in person?
That's an excellent question. And this, I'm smiling because, and I've shared this with some other folks. Last week, I was on a call with the Director of Talent Acquisition for Northwestern Mutual Insurance, big company based in New York City and Milwaukee. And this was a very professional person. She was talking to us about some branding that we're going to be doing with them. And in the middle of the conversation, her like 7-year-old son just went flying back and forth in the camera like Animal from the old Muppets. I mean, it was full on hilarious. So where am I going with this? As someone who also works from home, who has a 2.5-month-old son, and he has a pair of lungs on him, my gosh. What I would recommend, I also have 2 cats that seem to love to throw things off my desk right when I need them, is to find a space that you can control. Now, the other thing I'll say, and you might remember from the slide where the global head of recruiting for Ernst & Young said, cut yourself a break. Everybody's working from home right now. Everybody's trying to figure it out. No one expects that your home should look like a television studio. This is a crappy map that used to hang on my dorm room when I was a CA in Travers 9. This is a road trip that I went on when I was a college student at TCNJ, but I love it because it's just near and dear to me. But I can close the door to this room. There's nothing really offensive in the background, and I can talk with you without having to have my earbuds in or headphones on. I have had executives join me from their garage. I have had individuals join from their basement, but the rule has been just making sure that you can control your environment. When it comes to dress, I threw a jacket on because as my students will probably attest, I do teach in a full suit and tie, which I've since learned is not the norm anymore. It was the norm when I went to TCNJ in the early 2000s, and the joke was on me. But no one is expecting you to be 100% like you would be if you were going to the office. Now, that's not to say that you can just roll out of bed and show up. We certainly want to be using all of our hygiene practices, but we don't need to be wearing a suit and tie. or some kind of blouse. Just make yourself look biz cash, and that will certainly be good enough. If there is a major external facing presentation, because I know sometimes interns, as we take on interns, we take them to pitch meetings. If we're pitching externally, meaning we're talking with people outside of the company, then we might dress it up a little bit. But right now, the rule is control your environment, show up like you want to show up and be there, but know that you don't have to be dressed to the nines. I hope that helped a little bit.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And I was digging that question that I saw in the chat from Miles as well. So again, welcome back to the US, Miles. And Lynette has done an excellent job of really explaining what an informational interview is. But for anybody else who wasn't watching the chat, I love informational interviews. I used to do them when I was a student at TCNJ, and I've lost count of how many I've done, majority with students from TCNJ and a couple other universities and colleges in New Jersey, because that's where my heart is. An informational interview is a no pressure conversation. It's almost like you're a journalist. You're a 22-year-old journalist, and tell me about your company. How does somebody grow and develop as a consultant? You could even go as far as to say, what's a salary expectation? And they'll keep you on the rails. And I'm sure Lynette and the folks from Career Services will help you better than this. But I'm just saying questions that I've handled over the years that people would say, well, what's an entry-level salary that I could expect? I would usually tell them my experience, and then I would then kick them over to Glassdoor.com. I briefly worked for Glassdoor when Glassdoor launched, and still very strongly believe in that company. And there's all these different resources that are out there. But the single biggest thing for an informational interview is you're making a connection. It's an opportunity with no pressure, no job on the line, to connect with someone. And it usually yields very positive long-term results.
I have a great follow-up question to that. What is the best way to reach out and request an informational interview? Is it through LinkedIn, direct email, and who in the organization are you looking to connect with? HR, head of the department, etc.
Yeah. So I'll give you my answer, and then Lynette, I'm sure you probably have some thoughts on this as well. My experience has been the best way to get me is LinkedIn, and I know that those that I speak with is LinkedIn. If you direct email me, it's usually better that somebody that you know direct emails me with you CC'd, whether that's a colleague that I've worked with or somehow that there's a connection. Because if it's just a straight email, sometimes that might just get lost in the shuffle because I get so many emails in a given day. If it's a straight cold, there's two paths there. Handshake is going to give you a little bit more firepower because those are recruiters that are connecting with the College of New Jersey and want to be connected there. So that would be an immediate one. And again, I'm sure that Lynette or anyone from the Career Center can help you on that. The other way would be just going through LinkedIn. If you were to search, I'll just use Deloitte as an example because I'm well familiar with them in my time working there. If you were to go to LinkedIn and search Deloitte, or put Deloitte talent recruiter or recruiter in the search bar, people's names will pop up. When you expand their information, you will see ways to connect with them. So whether that's through InMail, and some of them even put their social channels as well as their email addresses right there because they want to hear from students. Those are all perfectly appropriate ways to connect. And it's a recruiter's job. They get paid and oftentimes get bonuses by bringing in quality talent into organizations. They want to have conversations, and they certainly want to have conversations with students from TCNJ. I forgot to mention that when I mentioned to Dan Black, the global head of recruiting at EY, I said, oh, I'm an adjunct to TCNJ. I'm going to be doing this webinar. He goes, oh, I know TCNJ. We hire a ton of people from there. The global head of a major company goes, I know TCNJ. What a great position to be in.
Well, that's certainly encouraging and optimistic to hear. That's great for all of our students on the call. Let's see. All right. Do you have any suggestions of where to find virtual panels or virtual events to attend?
Yes. Handshake would be one of them. So that's the TCNJ route. The other route would be, so let's say, again, I'll just use video production as an example, but you could be with any industry. Let's say you want to get involved in studio work or TV or production. I would recommend following Disney on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. I wouldn't bother so much with Twitter. The big three are going to be, so Handshake should always be the first place you go. then because that is an internal TCNJ resource, and that gives you the full firepower of the Career Center. The next step would be LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, because that I can attest, again, with what I do full-time at Universum, that is where major companies are spending their money. And if you were to follow organizations there, and they're putting up virtual career fairs and they're putting up virtual panels, you're going to see that content by following it on those sites. Some of those organizations are spending up to $10,000 a month advertising on platforms like Facebook and Instagram just to connect with college students like you. So the single biggest favor you could do yourselves is to follow them.
Very good. Thank you again.
You're welcome. I'm warmed up, guys. What else we have?
Yeah, I was going to say, do we have any others coming in here? And certainly feel free to turn your cameras on and join your audio if you want to join us face to face, so to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Sean.
Hello, Lynette.
It's been a great workshop. Thank you so much for having this for everyone. I'm so glad to be able to log on and listen to all the great things that you are sharing. And thanks so much for the shout out to the Career Center. You are so spot on all of the things that you've shared. I'd just like to offer one thought in addition to everything that you have offered thus far. You have given great kudos to the faculty members, including yourself, that you have worked with while you were a student at TCNJ. I'd just like to offer that hasn't changed. There are a number of faculty members that keep close relationships with alumni, and oftentimes alum will work through faculty to recruit for placement in either internships or full-time placement. So though you are looking at Handshake and you are on LinkedIn and looking at a number of other wonderful search vehicles, we have awesome faculty that are also looking to assist in your success and your placement post TCNJ. So continue to pick their brains and who they know and who they're networking with. And while we are also talking about LinkedIn, I'd like to share something that we put out to students as they are looking to connect with alum, to go through the TCNJ page through LinkedIn and then look at the alums that are registered through the TCNJ larger page. That gives an opportunity to make the personal connection through either a shared major, a shared school, shared faculty members, so that they are then making that networking connection before they ask the questions about what's available or what's it like to work in the industry, various different thoughts like that.
Yeah, I'll just thank you, Lynette. So Lynette's absolutely right. Perfect example. So I mentioned John Kipoff, who was the former chair in interactive multimedia. Over the past 4.5, 5 years, John has sent me certain students and said, I really think you should talk to this person. I guarantee you, I respond to all of those emails. I'm also a person. So in the time that I've worked with TCNJ, I've had 2 different jobs. I was working for a different ad agency. Now I work for Universum. And I am definitely a person who has gone to professors, be it John Pollock, be it John Kipoff, be it Dean Maurice Hall, be it former Dean Lawton. I've just said, who's your best student in graphics? Who's your best student in video? And I am certainly somebody who has poached and cherry-picked students as well. And I know that I'm not alone, that is an industry-wide practice. So Lynette's point about if you have a professor that you resonate with, and just ask them who they think you should connect with, it will open doors. Because that was the first thing I said, is that it would be better if I get an email from somebody I know with you CC'd, because I value that. I value my relationship with Professor X so much that out of gratitude to that person, I will talk to that student, because I also know that professor wouldn't bother me unless he or she felt that student was deserving of that conversation. Not like I'm some kind of great big deal, but what I'm saying is when it happens, it's almost a 100% ROI, return on investment, that I'm going to speak to that student.
Oh, we got another question I see here. Great, yeah. Do you think it matters what type of volunteer opportunity you participate in?
Absolutely not. It really, again, I think it just comes down to, as long as you're doing something that you're passionate about. I have some of the best interviews that I've ever had. So I've worked, my gosh, my dad worked for one employer his whole life. He worked for Colgate Palmolive. I've worked for like 17 different companies in the 15 years I've left TCNJ. But regardless of where I've been, some of the best conversations that I've ever had are when a candidate comes in, we don't even talk about their resume. We have a behavioral style interview, and they just start talking about what they're into and how they built this. And what that illustrates for me as a potential employer is, what's this person all about? Can I sit next to them in a room for 8 hours a day, or socially distance with them and talk to them through Zoom for 8 hours a day? And are they going to add value, energy, charisma, and enhance my team or my organization? Or are they just going to be there? And it becomes a no-brainer. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, here's my site that I created while I was at TCNJ, or we hired someone once, all she did was do drawings, and she would put up a new drawing on Instagram every day, but she was an artist and we were an ad agency, and we looked at it. We hired her on the spot. She was a TCNJ alum, by the way, and we hired her on the spot, and we wound up doing all of these like really cool artistic drawings and activations for companies because we just wanted to use her talent. It never fails to just have something. So whether you're volunteering with animals, whether you're making masks right now, you don't even necessarily need to leave your house. If you're somebody who builds websites, or if you're somebody who does bookkeeping and finances, and that's where you want to do for a living, if you want to be an auditor, what a great opportunity to just find a local nonprofit and see if you can assist and do some cleanup and some maintenance. You don't necessarily need to leave your home to be of service.
Great advice. Thank you. Yeah, some good tips there.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll make one last call for questions here, but I think, well, we are just at 2 o'clock anyway, so that is great timing. All right, Sean, well, thank you so much. I can only imagine that our students on the line took a lot from this, a lot of things they can be doing right now from home, as you said, to try to move themselves along during this time. So a lot of great advice, resources. I hope they take advantage of it. And I hope you don't mind if I say they can reach out to you on LinkedIn. I think you mentioned it. I don't think you're opposed to that. If you have any trouble getting in touch with Sean in any way, you can reach out to me, and I can connect the two of you once this is over. I'd also like to reiterate that this recording will be posted on our website, so our alumni website on TCNJ. If you take the drop down for events and find our webinar link, all of our upcoming and pre-recorded webinars will be on there. I think that will do it. Sean, if you have anything else to leave us on, but thank you again for giving us your time here. Out of the goodness of your volunteer heart, we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was really great to be of service. Nice to see some familiar names here on the call. You didn't show your faces, but you know who you are. Thank you so much, Pam, and to the team for letting me be part of this. It was great. Hi, Mile. It was a great.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks again for joining.
Take care.